The girl simply places her hand into the seawater, and suddenly, the fish around her start reacting, as if they've been summoned by something. They gather in massive numbers, swimming straight toward her. The greedy fishermen are overjoyed. With this strange ability, they'll never have to worry about making a living again. But what they don't realize is, the same power can also bring total destruction. The story takes place on a remote island. The main character, Bobby, and his wife are drowning in grief after losing their newborn child. But that very night, after a violent storm, large amounts of shipwreck debris are washed onto the shore. What shocks everyone the most is, hidden among the wreckage, is a baby girl. No one knows how she survived, but Bobby refuses to let her go. He holds the baby tightly in his arms, believing this is the ocean's way of compensating him for the child he lost. Then, something incredible happens. A wound on Bobby's back, accidentally cut earlier, starts healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. As the girl slowly grows up, the villagers begin to notice something astonishing. She seems to have the power to heal, whether it's minor injuries or long-term illnesses. As long as someone stands near Alla, they recover almost instantly. Because of this, villagers come to visit her every single day. Even those who aren't sick still insist on coming, treating it like some kind of full-body therapy. And the best proof of all are the parents living under the same roof as Alla. More than 10 years pass, yet they don't seem to have aged even a little. What excites the villagers even more is, Alla can also summon schools of fish from dozens of meters away. Compared to healing, this ability is even more practical. The villagers are absolutely thrilled. From now on, every fishing trip will end with a full catch. Without even realizing it, Alla becomes the guardian of the island, a living miracle walking among them. To keep this secret from ever getting out, the villagers decide to completely cut off contact with the outside world. They shut down all trade and even ban the use of radios. Whenever a ship passes by at sea, the lookout immediately rings an alarm, signaling everyone to turn off the lights. Terrified that the island might be discovered, to pass the time, the villagers start holding fighting matches every night. After all, with the girl around, any injury can be healed instantly. Bobby watches all of this unfold, and deep down, he begins to feel uneasy about the villagers' endless greed. But Alla says nothing. She quietly endures everything, using her innocence and kindness to maintain the island's prosperity and stability. But this seemingly perfect balance is far more fragile than anyone could ever imagine. One day, while playing with her friends in the hills behind the island, Alla accidentally notices something strange. All the bees nearby start gathering on her arm, but her friend, standing next to her, is getting stung over and over again. A sudden surge of anger rises inside her. Almost instinctively, Alla clenches her fist, and when she snaps back to her senses, she realizes that all the bees around her are dead. Alla never expected that in a moment of emotional outburst, she could trigger an ability that takes life. The little girl doesn't know what to do. All she can do is beg her friend to keep this a secret. But to everyone else on the island, she's still seen as a savior. A few reckless kids decide to test their courage. They actually eat poisonous wild fruit together, thinking that as long as they make it to Alla's house, before the poison kicks in, they'll be fine. But this time, something goes wrong. One of the kids eats far too much poison, and at that moment, Alla is out helping the villagers catch fish. By the time she's called and rushes to the clinic, it's already too late. The child has died from the poison. This is the first time Alla truly faces death. Helplessness and fear pierce through her once pure world like a blade. From that day on, Alla becomes quiet and withdrawn. The light in her eyes slowly fades away. And soon, Bobby and his wife realize something even worse. Alla's healing ability has completely disappeared. The news hits the island like a bomb. The faith the villagers depended on collapses overnight. Without Alla's protection, they begin to fear that disease will return. Even worse, they're terrified their fishing boats will come back empty. Soon, the villagers come up with a plan. They suggest bringing their most sincere blessings and taking turns visiting Alla, hoping to restore her power. But Bobby immediately shuts the idea down. To him, losing her divine ability isn't necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, it means she can finally get some rest. After all, 10 years ago, before Alla was even born, didn't everyone still live just fine? but his decision is met with strong opposition. Shockingly, even Alla's grandmother, Merlin, is against him. They completely ignore Bobby's concerns and insist that Alla belongs to the entire island, so they all have the right to decide what happens. Faced with an overwhelming vote against him, Bobby can only stand there in silence, letting out a quiet sigh. Early the next morning, his house is once again surrounded by villagers coming to visit. Alla looks exhausted, but she still sincerely thanks every single person who comes to see her.
I can't make you feel better today.
That's okay.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Bobby watches all of this unfold. His heart aches. He can't understand how these once simple, kind villagers have turned into selfish, greedy parasites. But what Bobby doesn't realize is Alla's grandmother, Merlin, has played a big part in all of this. Many years ago, Merlin founded a mutual aid group. On the surface, it was meant to help people share their suffering. But behind the scenes, she was turning Alla into something more. A myth. She claimed the girl was a gift from the stars and the ocean, and that losing Alla would mean losing everything. To be fair, it's not hard to understand why Merlin thinks this way. Long before Alla ever appeared, she was already in the late stages of cancer. If it weren't for her granddaughter's healing power, Merlin would have met God a long time ago. Meanwhile, Alla's mother, Grace, is deeply worried. She's afraid Merlin's illness might come back at any moment. Then one night, as she's tucking Alla in a bed, she makes a shocking discovery. Her daughter's healing ability has returned. That very night, Grace wants to bring her mother over immediately for treatment. But Bobby calmly stops her. Merlin is known across the village for having a big mouth. If she finds out that Alla's power is back, it won't take long before the entire island knows. Grace agrees at first, but the moment she turns around, she secretly brings her mother over anyway. After several days of secret treatment, Merlin's condition improves significantly, but she also notices something unusual. Alla's healing ability only works when she's asleep. At this point, Bobby is too exhausted to even argue with his selfish wife. All he wants is for Merlin to keep this secret. But things are never that simple. After an entire week, the villagers who go out fishing return almost empty-handed. Winter is approaching fast. If this continues, everyone on the island could starve to death. Merlin, who has always seen herself as a leader on the island, decides that Alla must step in. But Bobby firmly refuses. Merlin's expression turns cold. She tells him that the village council has already voted and approved a plan, and they've even figured out the details. They're going to take Alla out to sea while she's asleep and use her ability to catch fish. This proposal completely shatters Bobby's last line of defense. Furious, he accuses his wife of being just as insane as her mother. And then, he brings up the idea of leaving the island altogether. But Grace refuses without hesitation. She fears the outside world, and she can't bear to let go of everything here. In the end, under overwhelming pressure, she chooses to give in. Grace crushes the sleeping pills with her own hands. Completely unaware, Alla takes the cup and drinks it all in one go. Soon, she falls into a deep sleep. That's when Merlin leads the entire village, like a religious procession, carrying Alla to the shore. Amid chants and praise, the fishing boats slowly sail away from the island.
Many thanks to Alla. Many thanks to Alla.
And, just as expected, the fishermen return with another massive catch. Life on the island quickly goes back to normal. But as Bobby watches the celebration, his heart sinks into despair. He can't accept the idea of his daughter living her life under someone else's control. So he turns to his only friend on the island, begging for help. No matter what, he's determined to escape this madness with Alla. Without hesitation, his friend agrees. As it happens, he has a fishing boat at home that's almost ready. But what they don't realize is their quiet conversation has already been noticed by Merlin. That night, Merlin shows up at the friend's house with a bottle of strong liquor. With just a few probing words, she quickly figures out their plan. On the surface, she remains calm, even expressing support for their decision. She claims that Alla would have a better future outside the island. Completely off guard, the friend drinks the liquor Merlin brought. But after just a few glasses, his body suddenly starts convulsing violently. What he never expected was that Merlin had poisoned the drink. While Bobby is still working out the details of his escape plan, a sudden blaze erupts at his friend's house. By the time he rushes to the scene, the fire is already completely out of control. Bobby's legs give out. He nearly collapses on the ground. In that moment, he's lost everything. His only friend and the boat they needed to escape, all gone in the flames. Clinging to his last bit of hope, Bobby runs to the shore. But when he gets there, he discovers that all the boats have been hidden by the villagers. Left in absolute despair, he takes out a hidden radio and calls the police. Early the next morning, the lookout spots people approaching from afar. Bobby's heart fills with hope. He knows it must be the officers responding to his call. But at the same time, the villagers have already been alerted. They all gather, staring at the outsiders with suspicion. The social worker accompanying the officers asks a few simple questions and immediately senses that something is very wrong.
When you leave the room, you're supposed to say many thanks to Alla.
She decides to take Alla and her family back to the mainland for further investigation. But that decision ignites the villagers' fury. There's no way they would let their guardian leave the island. Everyone blocks the main road, refusing to let anyone pass. The officer instinctively draws his gun, and just like that, a tense standoff begins. Bobby quickly steps forward, trying to calm everyone down, but suddenly, the villagers launch an attack. A bullet strikes Bobby in the chest, and the police officer is shot dead on the spot. Everyone rushes to carry the severely injured Bobby into the house. At this point, only Alla can save him, but Merlin takes the opportunity to make a demand. Bobby and Alla must never leave the island. Faced with death, Bobby has no choice but to agree. Once she gets the promise she wants, Grace takes out the sleeping pills, preparing to force them down Alla's throat, because only when she's asleep can her healing ability work. But Alla has no idea about her powers. She can't understand what her mother and grandmother are doing. Her desperate cries for help attract a passing boy, and it just so happens he's the son of Bobby's friend. The boy has always felt that his father's death was suspicious. That night, Merlin was the only one who visited his house. Now, with old and new grudges combined, he doesn't hesitate. He pulls the trigger. And then, when the scene cuts back to the room, everyone inside is lying on the ground, motionless. Only Alla walks out slowly, her face completely blank. Not just her friend, not just her mother, but even the villagers outside the house. All of them have collapsed. No one is breathing. It turns out, in a moment of overwhelming emotion, Alla once again activates her destructive ability. But this time, her target isn't bees. It's every human being on the island. And that's the full story of The King Tide. Honestly, it's a pretty unique concept, and the ending is definitely satisfying. On the surface, it looks like a tragedy driven by greed. But underneath it all, it reveals a much deeper and more unsettling truth about human nature. Alright, that's it for today's recap. If you have a different take on the story, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.